You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. President Obama has announced plans to reopen the U.S. Embassy in Havana later this summer. Mark Smith reports.
Calling it a historic step forward, the president noted when diplomatic ties with Cuba were broken in 1961, the year he was born, Dwight Eisenhower thought they'd soon be restored.
Well, it took a while, but I believe that time has come.
And Obama says when America has a full-fledged embassy in Havana, its diplomats will make the case for democracy to average Cubans.
The best way for America to support our values is through engagement.
Announcing the step in the Rose Garden, he said he hopes Congress now moves to ease the trade embargo, because after 5 decades of shunning Cuba, it's time to open a new chapter. Mark Smith at the White House.
An unofficial private sector survey of employers says 237,000 jobs were created in June. Dan Celia of Financial Issues says it's a great number, but there is another report to keep in mind.
We also have the highest layoff announcements in 5 years. What does that say about the economy? I'll tell you what it says. It says that companies are panicked. It says that companies are afraid. Companies are cutting back.
The official jobs number from the government is out tomorrow, along with the unemployment rate and hourly earnings. A Supreme Court decision could heavily impact unions for government workers. Charlie Butts reports.
10 California teachers, along with the Christian Educators Association International, filed suit to halt collection of fees by unions from public employees who disagree with the unions. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case. Mark Mix is president of the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation.
The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case called Friedrich out of California that is building off of 2 Supreme Court victories that the foundation won, one in 2012 and one in 2014, that basically say that everything that government unions do is political speech. They are redressing government, and so therefore, if their speech is political, then there must be a First Amendment protection component. And if there is, then workers across the country who are employed by governments could no longer be compelled to pay union dues or fees to get or keep a job. That's significant.
Many government employees paying union dues don't agree with what the unions support and promote and don't want to have to finance it with their money. The case will be heard this fall. I'm Charlie Butt.
The mayor of New York City does not want people smoking in their own residences. AFN's Chris Woodward has more on the plan and why some critics of smoking say it brings unintended consequences.
According to the New York Post and other outlets, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio's administration is planning to select and pay 4 health advocacy groups $9,000 apiece to pressure landlords and developers to prohibit smoking in their apartment complexes so neighboring tenants do not inhale secondhand smoke. Health officials in New York City say the initiative is voluntary and, quote, everyone benefits from smoke-free housing, end quote. AFN sought comment from Jeff Steyer, a New York resident and former staffer with the Rudy Giuliani administration, now working for the National Center for Public Policy Research.
When they banned smoking in bars and restaurants, they thought it was the best thing in the world. When I walk by them, there are loads of people smoking just outside the bar. Now, because you can't smoke in the park in New York City, and you can't smoke in a bar and restaurant, you can't smoke at work, the only place people will be allowed to smoke is in front of their apartments outside. So the unintended consequence here that I know they haven't considered is increased exposure to secondhand smoke.
Steyer tells AFN that, quote, smoking is one of the worst things people choose to do, end quote, and he encourages people to quit smoking.
But cities like New York are closing off avenues to help people quit smoking.
I'm Chris Woodward.
A Louisville, Kentucky school system has fired a bus driver who inadvertently dragged a 7-year-old girl about 500 feet when her backpack got caught in the door. Driver Melinda Sanders was fired in June by the Jefferson County Public Schools, which said she failed to follow proper procedures in the incident May 15th. Police said the first grader was getting off the bus when the door shut on her backpack, trapping her alongside the bus as it drove away. Taken with minor injuries to a hospital, the child was released 2 days later. Authorities said Sanders was distracted talking to another student and didn't check the stairwell before driving away. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and on the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com. FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed. It has been purchased. It has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty, to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
Your help, folks. Simple as that. Need your help. Keep the lights on, the phones going, the squirrel fed out there running in the cage. So this, well, signal goes out to you. We need your help. Call Michael, 800-205-6245. 800-205-6245. Before I bring Brent on, we will read the beginning paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence. You really need to pick this up and you need to read it instead of sitting around drinking your beer and eating your pizza or whatever else. Come Saturday, the 4th of July, it should be a day of mourning because, well, we've sold our birthright. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitles them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. My guest today, Brent Allen Winters, a common lawyer. In his little book, The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, a clause-by-clause analysis. Brent Winters, welcome.
Hello, Randy.
So am I too harsh that we have sold our birthright for a bowl of techno-crap?
No, I don't think you are at all, and I appreciate you introducing me to that idea. That idea, the way to look at the 4th of July, you introduced me to that day of mourning, and I understand what you're saying. I hadn't thought of that before. It should be a day of rejoicing, but the evil empire moves on us apace. Of course, what has recently happened in the United States Supreme Court, what has recently happened didn't just happen. It wasn't a bolt out of the blue. This has been boiling, bubbling, and stewing for a long time, and it is the natural result of selling our birthright, as you put it. I suppose you invented that word, and yet what was that?
Techno crap. Your iPhone, your iPad, your Apple Watch, your
Yeah.
on and on.
Yeah, no, I get it. I never heard it before, but I see what you're driving at. And our Declaration and our Constitution clearly were intended and are intended still to be an inheritance handed down to posterity. They were not written just for those men then, as was, of course, Magna Carta, as was, of course, the laws of King Alfred, the laws of Edward the Confessor, the Declaration of Rights of 1628, and then on we go to the Scottish Rights and the Scottish Covenants of 1638 and the one following that. And then we get to the Declaration of Independence of America, of the United States, and then the United States Constitution. And those are just some of the better-known declarations of common law government, attempts to reestablish the laws of nature. Our common law is a significant slice of the laws of nature, of which our Declaration refers, and you read it here in the first paragraph. It says, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. Blackstone tells us, as does John Locke, the laws of nature refer to the laws unwritten in creation, intended to be observed and recognized. Romans chapter 1, the laws of nature's God are that special revelation of God written in the Bible, intended to be heard, read, and ruminated upon. And those are the things we have not done. Number one, there are only 2 volumes of law that are fundamental to Americans. He mentions them here in the Declaration 76. The first one is to be recognized, and if the first one isn't recognized, God will not lead you to the second one. He won't open it up to you. He promises that he won't. Romans chapter 1 lays it down in no uncertain steps. Bang, 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 how he operates. He gives us his M.O. If we will but recognize the laws of nature, then God will lead us to the laws of nature's God and give us that special revelation that is more specific and more to the point and governs men. It is that objective standard, those 2 volumes, that objective standard whereby we may live and not die, the Bible says. And our Declaration 76 recognizes that.
Absolutely. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings and to his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation, under Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left-behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Alan Winters, we're discussing the Declaration of Independence out there and your birthright that granted you, that we've sold it down the river, that come Saturday, you'll be standing there on the main street there, waving your little flag as the parade goes by, and the grinning politicians are sitting in the back of a convertible saying, vote for me, vote for me. And you'll never know to pick up the Declaration of Independence and go to that grinning, smiling politician and saying, are you going to reestablish the principles in this declaration? Or are you going to give us more despotism and tyranny?
You've made the point. Brandy, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, I thought I lost you there a minute. I'm sorry.
Brent Allen Winters, my guest. CommonLawyer.com. CommonLawyer.com. You can get his radio shows there. His books are available. You need to study this. Brent has spent umpteen hours out there dissecting these documents, the Bible and common law, and you need to learn this. You need to teach it to your children. Declaration of Independence, that all these documents, these founding documents, I mean, we have the Declaration of Rights. That was the first major petition that the Congress and the colonies sent to the king. Then the cause and necessity for taking up arms, another petition for redress of grievance, and then finally, Parliament and the king refused to hear and said, oh, we don't have to hear you. You're mere slaves on our plantation.
That's right. And that's what Blackstone called the American colonies in the first volume of his commentaries. He called them the American plantations. Of course, that's a common way to refer to colonies. They were planted in the New World, so he called them plantations. And he said, Blackstone, who we hold in high esteem, I myself hold him in high esteem, but he said that the American colonies have not the right to apply the common law in our American plantations. And that is why the war occurred. And we can see that from the response of our First Continental Congress back in 1774. It was the common law of England, which our Congress called the Constitution, their Constitution, their Constitution. And it is still our Constitution. And as it is often said, we are more English than the English because our common law has reverted more back, and using our American Constitution, which is a brief of common law government, but it reverts back to the Anglo-Saxons and Danes. Justice James Wilson of the U.S. Supreme Court made that observation. Our common law is not like that watered-down Roman imprint common law of the Normans that arrived in England in 1066, but goes back further and is an attempt, as was Magna Carta, to reestablish that which had been lost. Our Declaration of 76 follows a common law first principle that we've held to. Our Constitution mentions it, but our Declaration of 76 says that it is giving notice, as you observe, and there's a strong appeal there to their common sanguinity, their common blood. They were British, too. They had brethren on the other side of the pond. They appealed to their law and their own law. They said, we're entitled to the common law, just as are you. but it was all to no avail. But in doing so, our war for separation from Britain was a war. It was our Constitution and our country was born out of the adversarial process. And the thing that enlivens our Constitution, and without adversity, our common law has no enlivening. There must be a conflict, as our Constitution puts it. Just to get into court, it must be a real case in controversy where there has been real damage. As the common law has always said, by analogy, there must be a bloody plaintiff, and the Declaration of 76 presents the United States as a bloody plaintiff, not just in a figure of speech, but in reality. It complains that Britain was then plundering and inciting the French Jesuits from Quebec, along with the Red Man, to come down and murder their people. And it was happening. They also had in the works a plan to infect the entire American population with smallpox through the slave population in the New World, to wipe the American colonists out to a man and retake the land. To a man, woman, and child, I might add. This was brutal business. Our country was birthed out of a forge of fire on the anvil and under the hammer of adversity. And we are the only common law country of a half dozen in the world. We are the only one that owes its existence to the birth pangs of war. And we, unlike Canada, demanded our common law. The Canadians up there there weren't enough of them up there at that time to make a lot of difference. And the only ones that were there, as our Declaration of 76 points out, were under the law of the city, not the law of the land, the Roman law, not the common law. And our Declaration complains that King George, along with Parliament, his cronies, were then planning to extend the Roman law that had just recently been officially established in Quebec, extend that law into the American colonies and destroy their freedom. That's what it was all about. Our Declaration of 76 is our birthright. Adversity is the only thing that enlivens our common law. Adversity is the only thing that maintains our freedoms. Adversity is the only thing that keeps our government in check at all. That's why three branches, that's a common law principle. There are three branches of government. None of those branches of government, no one of them trumps the other, contrary to what even well-known conservative lawyers say today. I interviewed, Randy, a couple of them that are very well-known. Won't mention their names because I like them otherwise. I asked them both a question. One of them was on the Supreme Court of a particular state of our union. I said, which branch of government has the final word respecting any particular issue? And they immediately said the Supreme Court. That is wholly untrue. I didn't learn that in law school, Randy. I learned that from a 6'7" red-headed basketball player from the University of Evansville who was teaching me to prepare me to take a Constitution test so I could graduate from high school. And I remember those words, co-equal. And indeed, the pronouncements of the Supreme Court, as President Andy Jackson observed on a couple of occasions, the pronouncement of the Supreme Court are opinions, and he said they've given their opinion. Now let's see if they can enforce it. And the whole point of our founding document is that all the Supreme Court has is black robes and prestige, and we have observed the rulings for the sake of order, not because we were forced to in the past, but because it's our common law tradition, unwritten, and that's what makes us free. But this recent opinion, Randy, has destroyed our respect for the Supreme Court. Destroyed it. I say it has weakened it. For many, it has just weakened it. For others, it has absolutely destroyed it. And without respect for our courts, we have nothing left in our common law tradition, because our courts have relatively no power, but yet we have always held them the first branch of government that grows from the constitutional tree of our common law. And we've held them in esteem out of respect, and all their black robes and all the things we do and say. But I talked to a lawyer recently, and many lawyers in the United States are members of the bar of the Supreme Court of the United States. All you have to do is pay a fee, and if you've been a lawyer 3 years, you can can join that bar, but I've talked to some that have told me, without me eliciting a response, that they're going to pull their membership in the United States Supreme Court. Used to be a point of honor to be a member of the bar of the Supreme Court, and no longer it is. No longer is it because of this recent decision. But this recent decision, of course, is in a train of many decisions that have piled up, and that's the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of people. Well, we have denied, as our Supreme Court has done itself, have denied our birthright, as you put it.
Yes, which we can all lay at the feet of the 14th Amendment.
You make an excellent point. The 14th.
Now,
yes.
Now, you mentioned just earlier that to become, the common law, part of it was, the major part of it is the due process. Part of that due process is the court is open to hear a real claim or injury.
That is correct, yes.
Was this case of the sodomite marriages, was this a real claim or injury?
Well, and you make another excellent observation, and this goes to show that you don't have to be a lawyer to understand fundamental first principles, and that's what we're missing. It's not the details that are bothering us about sodomy. It's just the flat fundamental principle that men do not have a fundamental right we're talking about here, delivered from God to them directly. Men do not have a fundamental right to body parts, as women do not have a fundamental right to do that together. Let's put it on the line. What's going on here? Now,
we're right back to the declaration again of the laws of nature and nature's God.
I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because I don't know what else to do. I tell my children, have for years, they're grown now, but I said, if you hear somebody laughing, start listening real close because somebody is telling the truth. That's why people laugh. They either laugh because it's funny or they don't want to cry.
Yes.
But that's right. This is a matter of nature. This isn't something, as John Wycliffe said, it's contrary to the senses. It's a matter of the laws of nature. We don't have to have the special revelation of God to understand that this is not something God protects. You see, we have, and you talked about the 14th Amendment, some rights we call fundamental rights. The fundamental rights are those rights, and those rights, by the way, that means, that's the old Germanic Anglo word, that means responsibilities. Duties of discretion and discernment. Duty, a right is not accompanied by a corresponding duty. A right is a duty, period. And God has delegated duties to individual men direct, and those directly delegated duties we call rights, fundamental rights. But then men come up with these ideas, these terms called like civil rights. Well, those are privileges that men say we should have. That's the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment tries to relegate some fundamental rights to privileges given by men, given by governments of men. That's one of the reasons why the 14th Amendment is fundamentally wrong. But to come back to the natural law, the laws of nature, that's volume number 1. The laws of nature's God, that's specific, that's written, that's volume number 2. The laws of nature tell us that God has not delegated to men a duty to cohabit sexually with other men, one man with another, or women with women. And the Supreme Court took jurisdiction over that case that is now so famous, took jurisdiction over it on the basis that there was a constitutional question involved. And that constitutional question is this: has God given a fundamental right? Do men have a fundamental right to marry men and women to marry women? And it is clear that they do not. You don't have to have the Bible, although the Bible speaks to those questions in the clearest, black letter, bright line words. And we know those things are not something God approves of. In fact, the Bible says that where those things occur, and I say this to show how God, the creator of all things, feels about it. He says such men rape and women rape the death penalty. That's what God says. And I can't believe, and I don't believe, that God has changed his point of view about that. Now, that doesn't mean, we hasten to add, Randy, that anyone should take the law into their own hands and go do them. That's a matter for due process.
And that's a matter that God will handle. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this brief message here on the American Freedom Network.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we're back. Brent Allen Winters, a common lawyer, my guest today, commonlawyer.com. Commonlawyer.com. You can find the links to his radio shows there 6 days a week, doing a radio show. He's doing a series on Magna Carta. You can email him from there, and his book's available there. We're discussing today Declaration, the United States Constitution, Declaration of Independence, a common lawyer comments, clause by clause. Saturday, you ought to pick up the Declaration, folks, and read it to your children. Read it to your parents. Read it to your brothers and sisters. Read it to your neighbors. Then,
Randy, I had a daughter. No, I still have a daughter. But yes. I put it in the past. I have 5 daughters. But one of them got it in her head that she was going to memorize the Declaration of Independence. And she did so. I think the reason she got it into her head, the group that she was with said that if she did that, she'd receive a special award. Well, they never gave her the special award. And I, at that time, was on the radio live in the morning, and so I had her come on the radio and recite the whole thing. And I wish that, of course, all of my children would have had the pressure that she had to do that. She was excited to do it, but I'm glad she did. And it communicates, the Declaration of 76 communicates a number of things. If a person ruminates, that is, chews it like cud, that are consonant with the Bible. And among those things is this: it begins and it ends, it opens and it closes, like a couple of bookends on the thing, with an expression of respect to men. Respect to men. And in the opening it says that's why it is given, because it is notice, and it is notice open and candid. It says, use the word candid, that means open and for everybody to see. And it does that out of what it calls a decent respect to the opinions of mankind. And then in the end of it, it makes a similar statement. And also, among all the things it says, it gives us about a half a dozen tests, T-E-S-T-S, whereby we may know whether, and these are from the laws of nature, the common law, whether a government should be thrown off because it is turned tyrannous. And those half a dozen reasons are given, and they're in the, I expound them a little bit in the commentary, the little book you were talking about. It's a couple of 100 pages long. I guess it's little, but it's still plenty packed. But those are expounded in that book. And when these are examined, we can take these same 6 points, these tests, and examine them and see if they apply today. And if they do, then that means action is justified to do something to make some serious changes. You'd read it a while ago. It says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces the design to reduce them, that's us, under absolute despotism, it is their right. Now, he makes this point. This is good. It is their right, and then he defines that. It is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. But in that, he says, he gives, let's see, if I said half a dozen, let's look at them real quick. He says, first, if you apply these tests, in hindsight, do the abuses and usurpations form a long train? In other words, are they all connected? Secondly, second part of the test, does this long train, is it headed for absolute despotism? That's number 2. The third part of the test, does this long train show no wandering from its heading toward despotism? And number 4, does this train show, and I'm quoting the Declaration, does it show a design to reduce the people under absolute despotism? And all 4 of those, it wasn't a half a dozen, but it was 4. You could divide it up in different ways. But all of these are, the thread that runs through them is the pointing and the leading toward despotism. And he says that your right, that is a jurisdiction, your jurisdiction is a duty to throw it off. Now, our Constitution, of course, gives us a due process. It's a common law document, and it gives us a process whereby we may deal with these things. For example, number 1, the justices that promote this idea, this is a real case in controversy now to us, even though it wasn't when it went to the court. It is to us because they have proclaimed it. And our Constitution gives us the option now to push for impeachment of these judges, removing them from office. And this should be done. People should press their congressmen and their senators, the congressmen first, to indict as a grand jury. That means indict, that's what impeachment is, catch them. The word impeachment means to catch by the foot. An indictment catches a fellow by the foot to hold him over for trial. Well, that's what the House of Representatives should do at this point. Those justices should be impeached because they have acted outside the jurisdiction, utterly outside the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. One thing about the courts, I want to mention this quickly, if I may, Randy. Every lawyer ought to know this just to pass a bar exam. The courts, the federal courts of the national government, are courts of limited, extremely limited jurisdiction, limited to anything that arises under the Constitution and the laws of the United States. Well, that's the same thing to say in only questions that arise under the Constitution, because all the laws of the United States have to be pursuant to the Constitution. So it's safe to say the jurisdiction of the federal courts is limited to things that arise under the Constitution. By the way, that only includes 4 crimes, just 4. 4, no more. Those are the only 4 mentioned, the 4 kinds the Constitution mentioned. So the courts of the federal government are of limited jurisdiction. The courts of the states are of unlimited jurisdiction. The courts of the states can hear any question about anything, federal or state. And that is where the power should be concentrated, in the states, not as it is now and as it has increasingly become, without warrant, without justification, without jurisdiction. For example, I like to cite this example. There are now almost 6,000 federal crimes on the books. 6,000 crimes of which our federal courts claim jurisdiction to hear. Most of them aren't crimes at all. They're just things, actions, behavior that Congress says are crimes that aren't at all. But 6,000 when our Constitution only mentions 4. We have allowed.
And most of those crimes are because you didn't send in a piece of stinking paper.
Well put, a return of some kind, an information return.
Now, if they want to have 6,000 federal crimes, that's fine. They apply in a 10 square mile area, Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands.
You know, that's true. You know, it's funny.
That's it. We'll be right back. Stay tuned here on the American Freedom Network.
Square Root Construction is pleased.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You've noticed that there are few commercials on this radio network, and there's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our various affiliates. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs on our Listen and Schedule pages. Then when you subscribe, we'll send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately and continue with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We ask you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program, host, or cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we're back. Brent Winter's my guest today. His website, Common Lawyer. CommonLawyer.com. A wealth of information and education there, folks. He's got a ton of audio from his radio shows up there. The links are there at commonlawyer.com. His books available. Excellence of the Common Law is a book you need to read and put in your homeschool curriculum, talking about the Declaration of Independence. So, Brent, we've gotten down this road of with the Supreme Court and the sodomite marriage ruling they just came out with, laying at the feet of all done by authority of the 14th Amendment. Now, and this was a question of the Defense of Marriage Act passed by Congress. Couldn't Congress, when they passed that act, they said, here's the Defense of Marriage Act. It's between one man and one woman. That is marriage, and this is not reviewable by any court of the land.
Could they do that?
Yes.
Well, certainly the jurisdiction of the federal courts is entirely within the hands of Congress, and Congress could end the existence of every federal court in the country. According to the Constitution, they can do this, with the exception of one federal court, and that's the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court of the United States is the only court that arises direct from the Constitution of the United States. All the other courts are creatures of Congress.
Okay.
And so if the federal court, and so Congress has the power to establish them, to end their existence. It has the power to limit their jurisdiction as tightly as it wants. It could take away from the federal courts all consideration of family matters. You know, you said in your comments you talked about defense of marriage. Congress could do that. But if they did that, they would be exceeding their jurisdiction because the federal government has absolutely no jurisdiction over family matters, with the exception of the right to marry. For example, if the state says men don't have the right to marry men, or men don't, this man or that man by some law, or this person who has this condition, we don't want people like that getting married because we don't want the kind of children they'll produce. Well, that is a constitutional question, and our Supreme Court has observed that men and women have a right to marry. They don't have the right. Men don't have the right to marry men, but men and women have the right to marry because, and listen, this I can't overemphasize this, Randy, to our hearers. The right to marry is a right that arises under the most fundamental covenants of God. God said to our first father Adam, "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth." And in every state of the Union, the primary leading purpose, it is not the only purpose, but it has always been the leading purpose, and I know it's that way everywhere where I've been. The leading purpose is to multiply. And everything about marriage has to preserve that right. And to say that men can marry men is a direct attempt to thwart the most fundamental of God's covenants. That's why it's yeah, go ahead.
And the most fundamental of the establishment of God's government, because it starts in the family.
No, no question. The family is the government of God, and all these other things we see are nothing but stopgap measures to try to keep things from going utterly chaotic, because family government is not even trying to be functioning. And family government, I want to add up one other thing, family government rests upon one principle, and that principle is this: honor thy father and thy mother. Honor thy father and thy mother. That means respect them. And it rests more particularly on the principle of honoring thy father. Honoring thy father. You cannot honor your mother unless you honor your father. You cannot. It does not say honor thy father or thy mother. It says honor thy father and thy mother. And the covenants of God, the fundamental covenants of God, come through the male. And no one else has the opportunity to participate in those covenants except through the jurisdiction of the male, unless, I'm speaking of God's revelation to man specifically here, unless a woman is a widow or a child is an orphan. Those are special categories, and we better not mess with them. We better do all we can to protect them. But if a woman is not a widow, And if a child is not an orphan, their channel for participating in the covenants of God is through the headship of the male. So it is the male that must be destroyed. The evil empire must destroy the office called husband and father. And that's what this is all about. It's so directly contrary to the covenants of God, it must be disobeyed. Every lawyer in America, every judge has an absolute, unqualified duty to say no. Every legislator in every state has a duty to say no, because every one of those people will answer direct to God for whether or not they fulfilled their oath to the law of the land, the laws of nature, and the nature's God. It's no accident, we were talking about this a while ago, no accident that throughout the history of our race, sodomy has been called, and our common law calls it this, that abominable crime against nature. That abominable crime against nature. That's what our common law has always called sodomy and lesbianism, whatever words are used for them. And it is utterly, utterly abominable that the highest court in our land would brook such madness. And for us to brook such madness means that when the judgment of God falls, it will fall on us too unless we say otherwise. So I say, and I say openly, I'm no part of this. And I do, not only do I not disagree with it, I vehemently disagree with it, and I do not want to allow it anywhere. It's wrong, and I say publicly it's wrong. It is a slap in God's face, and I don't want to be any part of that. To do what they've done from their ivory towers is the same thing that the settlers of the city of Babylon did in attempting to establish their own government outside of the government of God. And God slapped them down, and what they wanted to do was stop the multiplication of man and the spreading out of the land. They said, let's draw all men together. See, there it is again, another twist to the idea of destroying the covenants, the most fundamental covenants of God.
Yes. We'll be right back. Stay tuned here on the American Freedom Network.
Howdy, folks.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States in 1963.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no secret is revealed. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President today.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America?
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America?
I've got a vision for what I want to do for the country. See, I know exactly where I want to lead. It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America?
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
CommonLawyer.com is the website, CommonLawyer.com. You can email Brent there, and his radio show links are there. There's just a ton of audio links, archived radio shows on subjects you need to know about. This show is about coming up here on Saturday, Independence Day. Well, actually, we've all sold our independence for a bowl of techno crap. So while you're drinking your beer and eating your pizza and waving your little flag around, maybe it'd be better to get on your knees before God and repent, because his judgment is coming. Birthright. Does he hate us now because we've sold our birthright?
You know, the Bible says that Esau, I think it uses the word despise, and you used that a while ago, didn't you, to describe that? I think that's the way the Bible puts it. And that's a good translation. Despise means to look down upon or to not look at all. Just it's not that people that despise things or despise their birthright would openly say, I hate my birthright. It's just that they don't take time to consider it. I still do if it comes up, I suppose, but my children are grown. I've described to them lack of respect. Despising is lack of respect, and the same root word is used, despise and spect. They both mean to see or to look, but if you do not respect somebody, that means you don't look at them very often. If you despise somebody, you just neglect to look at them at all. And you're like that king in Israel. And the prophet said to him, well, you hate God. And he said, what? I don't hate God. I even named a couple of my children after him. What do you say? Well, the truth is, it's a situation there. He makes these shows of saying that he respects God. But if you respect God, and if you respect your parents, you look at them once in a while and you pay attention to them because you want to know what pleases them and what doesn't please them, and you like to do what pleases them. And the same thing is true with God. And when I say you look at him, he's not here. And by the way, you can't see him. And he says he is the God who cannot be seen. He's invisible. And he doesn't want us to see him. That isn't the point. He says on the mountain when he gave the law to his people, he said, you heard the sound of a voice, but you saw no similitude. I didn't show you any picture of me, but you heard my voice. And what God wants us to be interested in is his words telling us what he wants us to do, revealing his will. His will is his law. It is his law. It's not a word to be afraid of. God communicates it to us in many ways. He does it through poetry, through history. He does it through biography, like the Gospels, through epistles, letters, written. He does all these things so we won't miss it. It comes at us from many angles. He says the same thing over and over and over again, but he just says it in different ways. And he tries to touch everybody's sensibilities. That's why there are 4 Gospels targeting 4 different groups of people. And if we respect God, we will simply pay attention to what he says. We will look and listen. And that's what he wants us to do, to be respectful and to do it.
And we're on our top of the hour news break. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Continue on with this discussion of the Declaration of Independence, or should it be a day of mourning? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Now you can reach the American Freedom Network at our new P.O. Box 7.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
I pledge allegiance to